Ooh.
Yay! Oh my gosh. Welcome back for another episode of the I'm Not Salesy podcast. Okay, I'm Cassie McKenzie. You know me. I'm your non-salesy sales coach, and I have such a fun guest today. Like, we're totally going to dork out in the best way around sales today. I have a feeling this is going to be one to bring your notebooks, make sure you re-listen to this, come back to it, because it's going to be jam-packed with things that you can actually implement, which, you know me, I don't want you to just listen to this and then passively listen and go on with your life and never change anything about it, because that's not the vibe. We want you to take what you've learned and try it out. Even if you fail at it, like at the first time, like that really doesn't fucking matter. Like, you just putting yourself out there and trying is like half the battle most of the time. So I have Grace Lancer, and you are going to absolutely love her. She's actually calling in from Tel Aviv. I've never interviewed anyone for either of my podcasts who was in Tel Aviv. Like, there's been Bali, but welcome, Grace. I'm so excited that you're here.
Yes, me too. And thank you so much for having me. And also for being your first guest from Tel Aviv. For everyone listening, I am English, but I
Yeah.
do live in Tel Aviv now. So there you are, putting pins in all maps of all the different areas of the map on the world.
Good. Yeah, like I'm trying to think of, like, I had, some other places in Europe and things like that. Bali. I may have had a guest in South Africa, but I'm not really sure. I can't really remember. It's been like a lot in 4 years, but definitely I'm 100% sure never Tel Aviv. So if you guys are
This
wondering,
one.
I know. Woohoo. So Grace is actually like, she is the best at teaching you how to like super niche your product ideas. And she's a brand strategist and coach, but she really works with outspoken extrovert coaches, which, hi, hello, have you met me? And on how to craft the brand to get four-figure clients who want to buy from you. So Grace's work focuses on hyper niching your services with personality infused content and authoritative positioning, which, ding, 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 you hear about all the time on this podcast. So if you're seeing a common thread here, then make sure you brought your notebook, right? But mainly, Grace teaches clients how to sign on four-figure clients every single month. And I love that. I'm so excited to dive right in. So welcome, Grace.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited for this chat.
Okay, so first of all, so Grace is actually really active on LinkedIn, and I've been talking a lot here about how I love LinkedIn. And so, but I noticed lately some of your content, you're talking about like extroverts and some of the pains and challenges, and especially today, you posted about extroverts as well. And like, I consider myself an extroverted introvert, if that makes sense. So like, I can show up and be like, la, 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 but I don't enjoy being around like a shit ton of people. Like, I'm very much the quality over quantity kind of vibe, And so, but I'm so curious. So, have you heard of human design or had your human design run before?
I have, and I am absolutely obsessed with all of these personality tests.
Yeah,
I've run many of them over the years. So the Myers-Briggs, like 16 personalities, if you know Insights, Human
yeah,
Design, Enneagram, DISC. I'm obsessed with them all because they're amazing communication tools for learning more about yourself, but
yeah.
also more about other people and how you can best communicate. So yes, with human design, I'm a generator.
I was gonna say, yeah, right. I love it. I'm a Manny Gen. So yeah, we definitely have a lot of energy in the room right now, guys. And so I, I really find that it's like what you posted today. And if you guys don't follow Grace yet, like, all of her links are in the show notes. So you can go connect with her there or on Instagram. But like, I I find it so interesting that, like, yeah, extroverts, you look at us like, oh, they must have it so easy, right? But like, it's actually quite challenging to feel 100% yourself and give yourself that permission to stand like fully into your power online. So how have you felt, like, I guess, what are some of like the milestones that you knew that you were finally becoming more of yourself online?
Yeah, so if we go back to November 2019, which is when I quit my job, the last year for me, I tell this a lot on my LinkedIn content. It's a massive part of my brand story. I was in a very toxic work environment where I was just continuously told, like, you need to think about the way that you're being perceived by higher management, by the team. You're being a negative influence on the team. You need to rein back your personality, and like your, like the way that I was like very outgoing and chatty in the office. And it came to not be appreciated. And it was so difficult for me because 4 years earlier, I'd actually been hired specifically because of my personality and because I was such a great culture fit. So it was very difficult for me navigating through that, where it was like, we hired you for this reason, but now we've become a bit more corporate and we've got, financial goals and aims because they were private equity backed and looking to get their next round of investment. And all of a sudden that didn't matter. So when I came into my business, when I launched my business in May 2020, so coming up to 3 years ago now, I was really excited to like show up as myself and be this person that like I was at my core. And because of the way that my mindset had like been conditioned from being in the corporate world for 4 years, I really, really struggled. Like I overthought everything. I wanted to post something and I thought, no, like people won't want to see that. Or like, what if it turns people off working with me?
Right.
What if I show myself and people don't take me seriously because they think I'm unprofessional? And this held me back for a long time. And I really felt like it wasn't, my personality wasn't reflected in my branding. And funnily enough, one of my friends said to me at the time, he was like, when I look at like, especially visual branding on Instagram, he was like, it just doesn't scream you. Like it's really boring and it's quite like corporate and professional. And I was like, oh, don't tell me that. Like, that's not the look that I'm going for. So for me, I wasn't totally clear on my brand story. Like I knew my past experience, but I didn't know that was my brand story or how to use it. And so I struggled to like really come out of my shell. And for me, it was a gradual thing. It was really also like the more I spoke to people and had conversations and heard people struggling with something similar, the more I felt comfortable in myself, like actually sharing my story and my journey around this. And I was like, I need to be the leader, like for these people, the people who don't have that confidence to speak up and share their opinions and what they're thinking. And so the more I did this over time, the more people really started to resonate and really started to love it. And now, like I'm 3 years deep and I'm way over any of that fear, but like it was there for probably like the first year of my business. And also that combined with trying to find my feet. And as you read in my post this morning, people thinking like, oh, extroverts should just like have everything figured out themselves. Like they know what to do, they can wing it. And I've relied on that a lot in life and it's been fine. But like when I came into a business, it's like, well, it's a bit difficult to just wing your business,
Right.
So, yeah, that's how like what got me to where I am today.
Yeah, like it's so crazy because I was actually having a conversation with a breathwork coach yesterday about this, where when you work in corporate, you know what box to fit in, so you're like, oh, you want me to look like that? Perfect, but when you come out on your own and you're an entrepreneur and you have a coaching business or a consulting business or whatever, you're like every trauma or everything that's deep down stored in your body that's been like just hanging out, having a good party, like eating the caramel popcorn every day too with you, right? Like it is like, hey bitch, what's up? Like it's my time, like I get center stage, and so you've got to know and have the tools, and be armed to be able to really combat that. Because like my experience, I was in like a very corporate pharmaceutical sales position and in sales training for 20 years. And it's a highly regulated environment. Like you can only say things that are on message. You really do not steer out of your lane or else you get fired. Like you'll still steer right into the dumpster fire, right? And so I'm like, I know how to be a great employee for a pharmaceutical company. So, and I know I'm great at sales. I know I'm great at marketing. I've got a degree. I studied abroad, like whatever, I got this. And I came out and I'm like, definitely what you're saying, like boring ass content. It looked really professional. And then you start to, like, even worse, look at what's working for other people, and then you're still not doing your own shit. You're mimicking what other people are doing because you're like, well, I don't know, this wasn't working, so maybe that's working. If it's working for them, then it must work for me. When really it's super hard and super uncomfortable to be your own self online. I would think, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, where, in the back of your head, you're like, no, these people are more professional. This is not TikTok. They don't want me shaking my ass every day. Like, they want, like my bullet points, right? So what's been your experience with that?
Totally. Yeah, it's a challenge for sure, and actually a lot of what I focus on is the business strategy side of it, but I am a fully qualified coach, and I do obviously focus on mindset as well, not deep-seated, deep-rooted like trauma issues, but of course every step of the way people will come up, against these hurdles, of feeling like they're not good enough, people are going to judge them, might be criticized. And so much of it actually is to do with mindset, is knowing, like, giving somebody permission. And I don't like using that word because nobody needs permission, but like giving people permission, like, you get to be the person that you want to be, and you get to sign clients from it. And this is so important because, as I said, the belief before that a lot of people have, like, in order to be taken seriously in business, you have to be professional, you have to be corporate, you have to show up in a certain way. You can't swear, you can't use emojis, you can't use like pictures that are like not polished and professional. And this is my message to everybody, is no, like, all those things that people tell you that you can't do to be successful are the things that you absolutely can do, because your ideal clients, the people that you want to work with, they don't care about any of that stuff. And you still come into this world and there'll be people that look at me and my brand and think like, nah, I don't take it seriously. And that's totally fine, because they're the people who don't take me seriously. They're the people who think I would only want to work with someone who wears a suit, who shows up like and spouts out like textbook content. Totally fine. Like, there's enough space in the online world for everyone. And that's why it's so important to dial up your uniqueness. Like, what are your core unique skills and qualities? And then, like, what I work on with my clients is like dialing down on that. Like, what's your USP, your unique selling proposition, like for yourself, your personal one, but also for your services. And then we dial that the fuck up, when we turn the heat up, and that's what we market, because that's what your ideal clients want to see.
Well, can you speak to that more? Because I would love to know. Right. Actually, I'm going to ask you one question, then I have another one that I want to ask you, but like this one first. Explain for people listening, if they're new to the podcast or whatever, new to marketing, what is a USP? Like, how do you explain it in ways that, like, the cool crowd gets it, right? Not
Let me now try and do this without sounding like a textbook. So your unique selling proposition is essentially, it does what it says on the tin. It's the thing that makes you and your services totally unique and different from everything else that's out there. Now, a USP, your unique selling proposition, when you listen to it in corporate and in startups and in the business world, it refers to the way that you position your services. So what is it that makes your services unique and different? But when I work with my clients, I actually break it down, as I said before, into two. It's, yes, what's different about your services and the way that you deliver them or what you offer, but also what's the USP of yourself? Like, what is it about you that would make people want to work with you specifically? And yes, it is about their personality, but also looking at, like, what's your tone of voice? What are your core values? What are you motivated by and driven by? Like, what makes you that would make your ideal clients be like, I just relate to that person so much that I want to work with them only. So that's essentially what it is positioning yourself and your services as something totally different in, let's be honest, an increasingly saturated space. You need to do whatever you can to actually stand out and be noticed by the right people.
Right. One way that I find it's so effective to do is to talk to, like, well, he talk to the wrong, like, speak to the behaviors that are like the wrong behaviors. You know what I mean? Like, what are the types of clients that you really want to work with, and what are the behaviors that the ones that you're like, what, keep on passing, like, this is not for you. I am not for you. Because honestly, like, for example, like I, for a long time felt like, well, I need to be like a little more easy in the feedback I give, and a little gentle about it. When that's not me. Like if I'm talking to my husband who's in sales too, and I'm like, so how'd your call go? And he's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nope, not doing that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, you got to do it this way. You got to try this. I did you do, And so me being more direct and more like uncensored is going to turn off people who really want to be held like a little fucking like baby chick, right? Like, I'm not for you if you want to be held like a baby chick. I hold a lot of space for you, but that's not the type of space, right? Now it's not like one of those like axe throwing rooms either, like, but it's something that actually gets progress. So do you have to deal with that too?
Absolutely. And this is why, and as you know, like such a big part of my messaging is exactly as you said. So many people talk about, yes, creating content, putting out your personality, the way that you want to be perceived by your community, by your audience, by your followers, um, to attract your ideal clients. But what's just as important for me is actually repelling your non-ideal clients. So not just saying, I want to work with you type person, but also saying, if you're X, Y, and Z, then my services are not for you. Like and being really clear about that, because that's just as powerful, because then you're turning off the wrong people. And I know that a whole load of mindset blocks that come up around that, oh, but I don't want to say anything to upset anyone or to like rock the boat a bit, or what if people think I'm like too controversial, or don't take me seriously. But it's like, you need to do it, because as we know, like when you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one, and you're not trying to appeal to everyone. You're trying to appeal specifically to your ideal clients, who will be people who are similar to you, who have a similar personality, similar viewpoints, similar values, potentially a similar brand story as well. So however you really authentically at your core want to show up is the way that you should show up. Because yes, it will repel so many people, but the people it does repel are not your people. But the people who love it will be so much more attracted and magnetized by you, to know like, oh my goodness, like that's my person, that's the person I want to work with.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest, like magnetism is an energetic thing, right? So if you're not being 100% yourself, even if you're like, okay, people can feel it, right? They know something's off. They can smell something's off. Like when I first started in pharma sales, I was 21 years old. And this is like a huge part of my brand story. Like I had braces and a bad haircut, and I looked like I was 4. I had cut my hair all short, but it's like, you can see how thick it is. It's like gigantic. And so in summertime, which was when I was hired in Florida, in Orlando, it's humid AF. So my hair looked like a mushroom, right? Like I looked like I was 14, and I was calling on people that were like, sometimes they were 3 times my age, and they were oncologists. They were saving lives every day. So it wasn't like I'm going to go roll up there. I had no idea. And I never tell this part, but like, I didn't really realize that when you buy like petite clothes, it doesn't just mean it's for short people, that it's actually like, so there were times where I bought suits where it was like, I've got long legs, and it was like a petite 4. So I'm like, oh, that'll fit just fine. But I didn't realize that it was like ill fitting too. So here I'm walking in looking like I got dressed in the dark. I'm not going to be able to sell off authority and expert status, right? So like there was this relationship and trust. I had to totally be myself and own the dorky side of me and be like, I know they're going to look at me like I'm their daughter, and that's fine. So why don't I start the relationship and then go to the people who can actually help me move the business here, And after 2 years, it was 22 million in sales, right? It was in a really shitty territory when I first took it over. And so clearly being yourself, even if it's the dorky side of you. Like I always say, it's like your weird is your wow. Like it's what's going to make you stand out. It's like the perfection is not necessary. As a Virgo, I say this, right? So there is like a little bit of like, yeah, there is a little perfection that's needed, right? But
No,
like,
totally.
no.
Yeah. Always about being yourself, embracing, as I say as well, like, your weird and wonderful and magical personality. Like that's the person that's going to magnetize the right people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I get messages all the time because I did a training in my membership around like messaging. And so the people who go through it and they see like there was like a module on Instagram story messaging, and I got a couple of messages like, oh my God, I was listening to this at work. And you were like, what the fuck is this? Like talking about like, I don't know. I tend to like rip apart fluffy messaging and give like a lot of great examples because I don't know. It's like you're not niched if you have fluffy messaging, right?
Totally. And I love that, we have similar approach, you talk all about being, no BS, and I'm like very much the same. It's you've got to cut through all of the fluff online because there is so much fluff. And that's why people don't get noticed by their ideal clients, because they're putting out fluffy, broad, vague, generic content that isn't hooking people. It's not hooking the right people. And so as we say, cut through it, read through it, because we're talking about content, like you create a piece of content, go away, come back to it, and try to read it with an objective eye, and then ask yourself and be brutally honest, would I buy from this post? Would I be interested in this post? Would I be like, wow, this person gets me? And if the answer is no, then it's not good enough.
Yeah. I always tell my clients, like, if you were to call and tell your mom your messaging, would she get it? Like if you're like, I'm going to help you solve your limiting beliefs and get in alignment with your highest timeline.
Yeah.
Like, what does that even mean? Like, seriously, like, give me an example of a limiting belief. Like, I will help you stop self-sabotaging or stop like reaching into the refrigerator at 10 o'clock to overeat, when you've been good all day or whatever. Like, like there's so many ways to paint the picture, but I'm so curious. So what's been your experience on LinkedIn? Like, when did you start on LinkedIn? And like when did you, I guess, start on LinkedIn, and when did you decide to super niche your products, and what kind of results have you seen from there? And I ask this because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who still have that fear of, I don't want to leave anybody out, and I see it every day. I see it in my clients. I see it in my husband's, actually, he's been unemployed. And so he went and got yoga teacher training thing like over in India for a month in January. And he came back and he wanted to do like some classes. So I was working with him and he's like, but I don't want to leave people out. I'm like, you've got to leave them out at first. Like the right people are still going to come. So what's been your experience?
You got to leave them out. So like you said at the beginning, I absolutely love LinkedIn so much. I should have shares in the company. They might rave about it and like sell it to everyone. So when I started my business 3 years ago, I started on Instagram, and 3 years later, I'm still going strong. And then came over to LinkedIn a year ago. And it was about April or May of last year when I started becoming consistent with LinkedIn. Now, I spent the first part of last year being a bit unsure about like my actual positioning. And I thought I was positioning myself in the right way, that in retrospect, I wasn't. And so it was
How
about,
were you positioning yourself back then, for example?
too broad. So I was positioning myself more as a business coach, but the positioning was too broad. It was speaking to too much of a broad audience with very fluffy messaging that everybody else was putting out there, essentially. And I probably jumped on that. I sort of jumped on that train a bit, and like, felt like I was competing with a lot of bigger name competitors where I felt like I couldn't, but I just didn't have the clarity at the time for like how to make it more specific. So it was great. So I was signing clients, but it felt very difficult in my business, because it wasn't specific for one person. And then in about August last year, I had this revelation about actually sort of switching from business coaching to personal branding, because I felt like it was more in line with me and my personality and the way that I showed up and how I could really help people. And then I had this epiphany kind of towards, December, where I was like, personal branding is still this like really fluffy term that nobody really understands. And I see so many people, still going out there now being like, I help you build a personal brand, but like no one knows what that personal brand is. And the worst thing is, when you say personal branding, people see it as this fluffy thing that's a nice to have that doesn't really deliver a return on investment. And I hear that from everyone.
Or it's just pictures and like a logo. It's like what you do in Canva.
Literally, people think that there isn't a tangible way to get an ROI from personal branding, which I was like, is absolute bullshit, because when you're building a brand online, of course you can look at engagement, you can look at reach, you can look at follower growth, you can look at like how many inbound leads are you generating, how many sales are you getting. So that in itself is a myth that people think that you can't generate. a tangible ROI. But then when I had this realization that personal branding is actually very fluffy, I literally got out my notepad and I was like, I want to break down the different areas of personal branding that people need to focus on in order to actually have a personal brand. So I started looking at the different areas and I was like, okay, cool. So like, it is about knowing your niche and your ideal client, but it's your tone of voice, it's your brand story, it's your USP. And then it's like, you know, the product, the service, what you're selling. And then it's like, you know, content and visibility. Of course, the visual side of branding, but I don't deal with that. So yeah, I just all of a sudden was like, USPs, brand stories, interesting. Like, I feel like this is a really good way that I can niche down. And then as if by magic, when I started having conversations with people, everyone was saying to me, like, when I think about my biggest struggle in, you know, in relation to branding and building my brand, I don't know how to define my USP and really differentiate myself from competitors. And I was like, that's it. And that's the thing when I said about positioning is so important. You can offer the same services as everyone else out there, but it's all about the way you position yourself and your services to speak to your ideal client. And so that was what I wanted to focus on. And I was like, it just fits with everything I've done in my business to this point, but couldn't articulate like the way that I show up and the way that I come across. And your USP is not just about having personality, of course, but like the way that I show up, everyone's like, you just have such a unique brand in the way that you show up, your visual branding, your personality, your tone of voice, you know, your story. Everything is so well defined. And I was like, I've just been marketing it all wrong. And so it was in January. So just almost 3 months ago, because we're almost at the end of Q1, 3 months ago, when I really focused on, okay, USP and differentiating people is going to be the focus. And then I started working with Richard Moore, my one-to-one coach. And I just said, like, I've got it, Richard. Like literally the moment we started working together, I said, I've got it and I know what it is and I'm ready to go full steam ahead with it. And he helped me tweak the target audience when I was like, I want to niche down within coaching because like, that's my experience and that's my journey. And then, you know, we went back and forth and we just landed on this like extrovert outspoken coaches because I just reflected on my journey and who I am as a person. And I was like, these are the people that I want to work with because they're the people like me. And everyone can be successful in business, but like, I know from using my bold voice and going out there and being controversial and not holding back and ruffling feathers and rocking the boat is like how people, my audience, sees me as an authority is because I go out there and I call out BS that I see online and I tell people like, you're doing this wrong, you know, and et cetera, you shouldn't be doing this or you should be doing this. And so I was like, I want to work with people like that. I want to work with people who have that confidence to just go full steam ahead and just be the way that they really want to be, but they just need a hand held, someone's hand to hold in order to get there. So to answer your question, it was about 2.5 months ago, and I launched a 30-day accelerator that we're coming to the end of it now. And you know, that got 16 a paid offer, 16 people in that. I'm launching a new offer on Monday. So I'm not going to say too much about that because it's a secret. And since then, like my one-to-one prices have tripled. So you asked the success, the tangible success I've seen in the last 2.5, 3 months. And that's it.
Yeah. What a difference it makes, huh? Because like, how long do you feel like it takes to warm an audience up? Like I talk to so many people in the DMs and they're like, so who do you work with? Like, what are the types of clients? Because I love connecting the right people. You know, I have a huge network and I'm meeting more and more people every day. And I genuinely like to connect people, right? And so some people are like, well, I'm not going to launch my offer yet. I'm still working on it. I'm like, why not start sales conference? Like start talking to people, find out if it's something you actually want to do, you know? Or there's other people who are like, well, I've been working on building my brand on LinkedIn for like 6 months, building awareness. And I'm like, it doesn't fucking take 6 months to build awareness. Like it could take 30 days. You can do this in under 30 days. You can become an authority. And how do I know? Because I did it. Like I used to be on Instagram hanging out there, like pissing my life away too. But like now coming over to LinkedIn, it's such a different world and it's such a better match for me too. But like, I feel like this is the place to be if you are a professional that also wants to be yourself, and like you really want real results, and you want like, you know, tangible results, right? But like what I love about your content is that you do such a great job of like you said, calling them out, but I feel like you do it in a way where they're like they're your best friend, and then you call them out and they're like, yeah, oh yeah, I do that thing, instead of like some people's content's like, here's what you're doing wrong and you suck at life and you should probably reevaluate a few more things too, you know, where and I can tell who they're working with, like who their coach is, by the tone they have, because it's this kind of like bullyish, kind of like mean girl, like Regina George. Whereas you're kind of like, listen, like cut this bullshit out. Can you just stop it? You know, like here's what to do instead. Like, you know this. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
it like it
Absolutely. Because as we said, you know, it's all about attracting the people like you. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with like, you know, DISC personality and
yeah,
like insights and based on like, you know, the 4 quarters. So for anyone that doesn't know, so like what you just described would be like the reds of the insights, you know, the high D, like the dominant, you know, these people. And while that's my secondary color, it's not my primary. My primary is the yellow, is the high I, the influence, the fluffy, outgoing and energetic person.
yeah.
And also the yellows are people-focused, emotional, as opposed to the reds that are task-focused, logical. So I really, really like care a lot about people. And that's why it's like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, you're absolutely effing shit and you know, shouldn't do this. Like, it's just not my approach. Like, I care first and foremost about people, but like, I'm there and I'm like, I'm going to challenge you. And as a coach, everyone coaches in different ways, but like I challenge people, like I challenge my clients, I challenge my community, because it's the only way that you'll actually grow and do better and leave your comfort zone and see more results. So that's why I do it, but I do it in a nice way.
I love it. I love it. Well, okay, so I'm just going to leave you with that. Like, in your opinion, if someone's listening right now and they're like, okay, like what are signs that, like, just give me like 3 major signs that probably your niche is too broad.
So your niche is too broad. I mean, there's so many different avenues here, but if you are, first of all, from a tone of voice perspective, because this also ties in when people say, I just feel like I put my content out there and I feel like there's nothing special about it and I feel like it blends in with everything else. That's the first sign. If you feel like your content is blending in with everything, it's because it's not targeted enough to speak to the specific person that you want to focus, you know, that you want to focus on. I would say also, like, if you sit down to write content or create, however you create, whether you sit down to write it, whether you go out on a walk, but if you don't know what to talk about in your content, it's also because your target audience is too broad, or your solution, your services are too broad. Because I have unlimited content ideas. Every day I go out, I think of something new to say. And I have been doing it 3 years and I am creative and I understand that I'm at an advantage there, but it is also because I know who I'm talking to. I know what problems they have, and I know how to use my content to solve those problems. So when you're not specific on that, you're like, how on earth do I create content? What do I prioritize in my content? Like literally, like I've had people say to me, like, I don't even know who I'm talking to in my content. And so that's why they're going out there and putting out generic, vague content that just speaks to the masses. And then also what I would say is, from a reflection perspective, like if you look at, say, like your tagline, your one-liner elevator pitch, and you feel like it sounds the same as everyone else, it's because it probably does. And for me, so without going into too much detail, because I know we're, you know, coming to the end, obviously, you know, like my focus is hyper niching. And a lot of the time for people watching this, you can just see my hand gestures here. But like a lot of the time, you know, people, this is the broad niche at the top that all of your bigger name competitors are focusing on. And this is also what people come in and what they feel like they should focus on as well. But it's like, no, you need to go below that, potentially below it a second time, because that's what speaks to people. And for an example, if you're in business, I help you, you know, sign clients and make money. Like, it's so broad. You're not telling anyone anything about what your specific solution is, what your area of focus is. You know, go below that one time. If it's actually, I help you make money by like getting visible on video so that you can show off your personality. Just
Right.
an example off the top of my head, but you're going one step lower, so people are more specific. Okay, it's all about video and building my confidence to get out there on video and show my personality. So yeah, if you feel like your tagline is just too broad, that it sounds the same as everyone else, that it's quite generic and not specific to your target audience and your solution, that's also when you know that what you're offering is too vague.
Oh my God, I love it. Thank you, Grace, so much. Now, I will say this episode won't air before Monday. So if you wanted to share what your offer is, I don't know if there's like a time bound or if it, you know what I mean? Feel free to do that. If you want to keep it a secret, then guys, go follow Grace on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you want to tell everybody where they can find you or whatever else you want to share.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
And thank you to everybody for listening. So if this airs after Monday, then I can give you a sneak preview, but come over anyway and find me on Instagram. So my handle is at Grace Lancer Coaching, or on LinkedIn, it's Grace Lancer with a little unicorn emoji after. You won't miss my profile. And this group coaching program is specifically for outspoken extrovert coaches, and it's helping you build, as you said at the beginning, the brand to get those 4-figure clients every month who are ready to buy. So the focus, without going into too much detail, is all about building a really powerful online brand that positions you as an expert and that really makes you stand out as that magical unicorn leader of your tribe who people want to pay and work with.
That's right. Like one of those really cool unicorns that leaves like the dust behind them, like not just like a typical unicorn that's like, hey, look at me. You know, like my 5-year-old's obsessed with unicorns, so we leave stickers all over the city. We have like a package we got off Amazon, and that Starbucks, they're in the drive-through line. There's this like pole that they painted over like recently. There were so many good stickers on there, but they had like 3 or 4 of our unicorns there. So big fan.
Amazing. I love unicorns too, as anybody will see if you go and check out my LinkedIn page.
For sure. Well, guys, go ahead and find Grace. You can check out the links in the show notes and go follow her, join her world. She shares amazing content about niching and standing out online and all the things that she just told you about here. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.